Watkins.
God is doing amazing things in Guatemala, and I believe that He's going to do this again.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today my guest is Michael Watkins. Welcome, Michael.
Good morning. Thank you for having me be here.
Now you live in Guatemala. Why don't you tell us about what you do down there?
Well, technically it's La Antigua, Guatemala, which is one of the historical cities of Guatemala, and I'm blessed to be able to pastor a evangelical, multilingual, multicultural church.
And your church has a ministry that really interested me. There's a lot of people there, as in many parts of the world, who are living in homes that are really low standard compared to what most Americans enjoy.
Pretty rough housing.
Yeah,
Yes.
so why don't you tell us about that housing and
Well,
what your project is?
Amongst the many things the church is doing, over the last several years, we have been building homes. We've actually been helping other organizations build homes, and about 2 years ago, we were challenged with the need to come up with our own home design. And the intention for the home is to replace the living conditions of cornstalk walls with dirt floors. It's some of the most roughest of environments. Your families and your children are waking up on dirt floors. And the children are always dealing with runny noses, sniffling conditions. In rainy season, often the homes have water running right through them. And so the kids wake up and their feet are, first thing they meet is that cold, wet dirt floor. And we felt that it was a need. Hey, there's something we can do to help these people get out of this situation. Why are they in that situation? They're there for multiple variables, some that they can control, some they can't control, but they're usually limited by health, economic, and just educational limits.
Cornstalk walls. I have never heard of homes with cornstalk walls. They must have a lot of bugs.
Well, they come inherently with the ability to bring in bugs, various
Vermin.
Yeah, I mean, literally, if you remove the corn from the stalk and start stacking those up side by side, these are the house conditions.
Wow. I read on your website that you also use seminary students to help with this. Now,
Exactly.
how does that work?
Well, again, of the many things the church has been doing, we've also been training pastors. At present, our church, we're a church, we've grown to about 300 in average weekly attendance. And it may be obvious that I don't look very Guatemalan. Standing nearly 2 meters, your average Guatemalan is 1.5 meters. I tend to stick out there. So wanting to reach more Guatemalans with the gospel, I need to put a Latin face on the church. So we started training pastors. There's a seminary about 30 miles from us that does a great job at teaching basic Bible information, knowledge, preaching skills, things of that nature. So we hired locals, guys that were going to be great pastors, and we sent them to school, and we bring them into the church, and we give them a job in the church. And now they're ministry leaders within the church that actively have their own outreach programs that include a Celebrate Recovery outreach ministry. And we've expanded beyond what we do in our church, and we've helped to establish a couple of other ministry weekly meeting spaces of Celebrate Recovery throughout the area, which is an addiction recovery program. I have a pastor now who's full-time with the National Police of Guatemala that's reaching out. We have another pastor who's focusing more on our internal church body, church family. And so these are all very powerful things. Well, they've now been taught, they've been trained. Well, I got thinking, wait a second, we need to build some houses. We need to train more pastors. But I can only have so many pastors working at the church before it becomes dysfunctional. Why not train pastors having them build houses? And so the plan is, with our Mil Casas project, is to be able to train nominally 60 pastors over the next 5 years. At any given time during the years, we will have 20 seminary students that are working for the church to build the homes. And they're the ones finding the families. They're the ones developing the relationships. They're the ones that, after we build the home, we come back. If for example, in any given community, we build 5 to 10 homes, and we have a critical mass of families. Part of their agreement to receive the home is to attend our life skills training course, and which is really a home group Bible study, and it's A to Z discipleship training. Well, these pastors that have been already through 2 years of school, we hire them in their third year, and they're going to work for us a year after they graduate. They go into these homes and they're running a small group study and talking about the importance of washing your hands, and the importance of drinking clean water, the importance of funneling your chimney from your fireplace outside the house.
Right.
Because cleaner lives lead to better lives. Oh, by the way, we have the Bible here, and this is what it says about living a cleaner life and a better life and a better hope and a better future. So the plan is to have the seminary students build the homes and build the relationships, of course, with the final punchline of our program being, do you know Jesus? Do you know that he loves you? We've been showing you Jesus over the last... You got the house.
It's the gospel in action.
The gospel in action, exactly. And by the grace of God, we do some home church planting out of that.
That's fantastic. So do you have any stories about individuals that you've seen change through what you're doing down there?
How long's your program?
Just tell us some of your
We'll
best.
start with a couple of them. We have a pastor on staff. When I first met him, he and his wife when they still own and operate a local gymnasium, weightlifting, and he actually, by profession, is a professional bodybuilder and held the title of Mr. Guatamala and Mr. Antigua. Well, the guy's just enormous. He's one of these guys you just want to just sort of puff yourself up and walk around just so you can feel like you're close to his mass. He's the sculptured guy. I first met him at the gym through a mutual friend that was attending the church at the time. And so I got talking to him. So how's your life? What's going on? Yeah, my life's awful. Not working. My wife, she can't decide if she wants to divorce me or shoot me. My kids, I'm estranged from my children. We've been separated. At that time we were talking, they had been separated for nearly 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And it was just, I hear a story and I'm going, well, this is depressing, And I'm surprised the guy didn't try and slit his own wrist in the process. And he suffered, and he would tell me right out, I suffer addictions. I've been addicted to cocaine and women. Not alcohol, that's never been an addiction problem. But these other things have destroyed everything that I would have hoped for. That's amazing. So I go talk to his wife. Well, actually, I didn't know his wife for about another 6 months. But this guy starts coming to church, and I see him sitting on my extreme left of our sanctuary. At that time, it was a small place, 100 people was uncomfortable. It was just that small. And so he's sitting to my extreme left. A couple of weeks later, I see a young lady sitting next to him. It's his daughter. She was 13 years old at the time. And then a couple of weeks later, I see this other lady sitting here with his daughter sitting next to her. So that's probably his wife. I get to know his wife. Get talking to her, and she's like, yeah, he's a knucklehead. I don't know if I want to divorce him or shoot him. I mean, she verified everything he said. And then the outcome of that was, after a couple months, they all start moving toward the middle, and they're now sitting together as a family.
Oh, wow. That's really neat.
Nominally 2.5 years after I first met them, my wife and I had been there since July of 2006. About 2008, I invited them to present at Easter services of what God was doing in their life. Because, it's one thing to talk about Jesus, and he's wonderful, he does this, he does that. But when someone can say, no, this is what he did for me. This is how he changed my life. This is how I know Jesus is real. I asked both Barbara and Giovanni to step up and share their testimonies. Now and I asked them, do not share your testimony with each other. I want to see how God works this. So on Easter Sunday, that particular Sunday, we had 300. Back when we were still a small church, we're still 300 on average now, but we had a big unified service, and they both stood up, and he gets up and shares his testimony. I was a knucklehead. My kids hated me. I cheated on my wife. I am a recovering addict to cocaine, and this is how I know God is real. I can now tell you that, and I can confess these things, and now I have a life purpose. I'm now a pastor of this church. I've been to Bible school, which is secondary to what I know God has changed in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how God has changed my life. I'm now, after 7 years of separation, back living with my family. My kids look forward to my coming home, and I have a relationship once again.
Wow.
Yep. Tears start coming down. Well, Barbara comes up right after that and says, listen, everything he just said is absolutely accurate. He's a knucklehead. And really, Barbara? Oh, yeah, and she just blasted him. He's a knucklehead. He cheated on me, abused the kids, gave the whole litany and verified everything he said. She said, now this is how I know God is real and Jesus is real, because he's changed my heart. For the longest time, I wanted to I could decide to shoot him or divorce him. And this is a public statement. This is not like Mike's embellishment here at all.
Right.
And I know God has changed my heart, because now I love my husband, Giovanni. And up until now, I wanted to forgive Giovanni, but I really couldn't. Now I know why. Because it needed to be public. So she looks right over at him. Giovanni, I forgive you. And whatever's happened between us in the past is done. Let's move forward. The whole church is now, tears are spraying out and flowing. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And I have many stories of that nature, where God has taken people who have been broken,
Mm-hmm.
who have been blatantly belligerent toward him,
Mm-hmm.
lying about, oh, I'm a Christian, but yet their lives are falling
Mm-hmm.
apart at the very core and foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And God has brought restoration. We've seen that with police officers. The National Police of Guatemala, the most dangerous police of all Central America. And I can walk in, and they are guys dying on the vine because they just need some love. They just need some truth. And we've been blessed to be able to bring them in and go, God loves you, and here's how we can show you how.
Mm-hmm.
And so they give us those testimonies. And it was very exciting to see the effects of change.
Very. How can you contain your joy when you're down there? I'm sure there's a lot of difficulties that kind of...
Oh, yeah. There really is. And anybody who knows me and my inner circle, they all know that I run a pretty crazy roller coaster ride.
Mm-hmm.
There's times that, and I've just simply learned, when I'm on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, if I'm running an 8, 9, or 10 for a long period of time, just wait for the drop off. It's coming.
Right.
And it doesn't just come down to 0. It's the negative reverse. Mm-hmm. So often, we can get in a trap and feel like my life isn't going anywhere. I'm only at a 1 or a 2. No, I can tell you, emotionally, I experience highs of 9s and 10s and lows of -9s and 10s. Mm-hmm. And there's times I struggle with, my life is only at a 1 or 2, but then I stop and look around. And if I get the eyes off me and see what God has been doing, okay, I gotta...
And that encourages you.
Yeah, I gotta smack myself silly and move on. Because it is not about me. It is about what God has done in Guatemala. Mm-hmm. And I'm on the front row seats of watching that. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah. Now, do you experience a lot of spiritual warfare down there?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm often asked, so what's it like to be on the front line of missions? I'm like, I couldn't tell you. I'm not on the front line of missions. Facts are Antigua is a tourist town. It's in the top 5, depending on who you talk to, it's the number 1 or 2 or 3 tourist cities of Guatemala. And it's a 500-year-old community. It's a fascinating place if you love history. It served as the 3rd capital of the Spanish colonies in Central America. Served as the 3rd capital of those colonies for over 230 years prior to the U.S. becoming a nation.
Wow.
They were doing heart research, printing money. It was the seat of political and religious power. The Catholic Cathedral in the Central Park, that was the next stop to the Vatican.
Wow. For
230 years. It profoundly impacted that entire region of the world. And we come into these places, we're living in this space, and these pieces, you can see the spiritual warfare because of the induction of the Catholicism into polytheistic teaching. It's a very different Catholicism than what is even here in the States. And I'm not on the front line of missions necessarily. I'm on the front line of spiritual warfare. I'm blessed to come in and set up a base of operations. I'm not like the Ecuadorian five that are going out in the jungle and not knocking on the Indian doors firsthand. No, I'm coming along and I'm supporting an expansion point from that piece. Spiritual warfare is always going to try and push back against that, no matter what you do. And we see it nearly every day.
And what would you say is your best weapon in that warfare?
Prayer. I don't mean to be trite. I don't mean to be trivial and to go, oh, well, yeah, that's what I would expect. But it's true.
Yeah.
When I fail to pray, I have more issues.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do pray, I still have the issues, but I feel better about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's really important for people to realize that because we experience spiritual warfare here in the States too. And
absolutely.
So since you're on the front lines of spiritual warfare, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about what you do about it.
Well, that's, yeah. And daily it is a wake-up call going, when I start to get twitchy and go, oh, how am I going to handle this? Oh, wait a second, I don't have to handle this. Now, it doesn't mean I can't stop being stupid. I've got to do things correctly. My power doesn't get shut off because I'm being spiritually oppressed. No, my power gets shut off because I don't pay the bill. So pay the bill.
Yeah.
Now the stress point comes in. Well, how am I going to come up with that resource? Oh, well, in the church's case in particular, I'm there to facilitate and manage God's resource. He's empowered me to handle. Mm-hmm. So, okay, God, how are we going to pay the bill?
Mm-hmm.
That's the hook. You go ask God, and watch how He solves it for you.
And you don't have because you don't ask.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you ask, you're going to get wisdom. If you ask,
Yeah.
you're going to get the resource to do what He wants you to do,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily what you wanted to do.
Right.
Big difference.
I think that's really important for us to remember.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
In the States, we tend to be so much do-it-yourself, and come up with our own dreams and goals and not depending on the Lord for His.
Yeah, and if I can keep from bringing my own first world problems to my third world culture, which I still don't understand those separations, but when you realize we're out trying to help people in abject poverty, and what we're giving them is really a glorified tool shed by any of the North American standards, but it's a bump up. It's a better step in life, because with the house comes a set of bunk beds, a water filtration system, a high efficiency wood burning stove, solar lighting kit, so the house doesn't cost them anything to function. And hopefully, so again, we're helping them to go from every day is a struggle just to stay healthy. Now they have a securable, cleanable, safe place. Okay, that makes a big difference in how their lives function. And when I talk about the first world problems, well, the reality is they're struggling. And if I can keep from worrying about whether my router gives enough broadcast range for my wireless equipment to work in my house, it's very mind opening. So. If I can talk about the broader ministries of the church, we have a feeding program that services 1,000 children. It's in a small community, Santa Maria de Jesus, and it's been exciting to see how God has taken what seemed like a good idea and expanded it beyond to anything we could ever imagine. Literally, I had developed a relationship with a young pastor who heard God say, you need to grab a hold of this church. The church that had been sponsoring, that had been sponsored by the Southern Baptists of Guatemala was getting ready to shut down because they didn't have the resources to continue it.
Wow.
And they said, well, if someone wants to pastor the church, you can, but officially we're closing it down. So he and his wife went to God, and they stepped up. It was Pastor Gabriel and his wife Olga, and said, we're going to pastor this church. Do you have any qualifications? God told us to pastor the church. Okay. Well, I met him a couple years later, and he had taken a group of maybe 15 families, relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, and spun that, and God had grown that number into a larger church group of 50, 55 people. And he was doing a bivocational pastoral position. He was a French teacher in a local school in Antigua, which was pretty rudimentary French, but it was what it was. And he had come across our radar, and we had met up and we had talked a couple times, and I'm like, that guy's pretty sharp. We got to figure out how to grow that church. God brought a group out of Oklahoma looking to build churches, and they're looking to build a physical building.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the middle of this conversation, I'm like, do we have to build a building? How much do you spend on that? Yeah, $15,000 plus or minus. If you gave me $5,000 a year for the next 3 years, he could be an intern for us. We could send him to Bible college, ordain him as a pastor, and watch what God does. You're going to build his church.
Mm-hmm.
We're in. So they
Yeah.
jumped all over that, right?
Oh, that's great.
And right about the time we were closing that deal and getting ready for him to start, another individual came to me who was in transition from another ministry local to Antigua. And it was all for good reasons and all legitimate. And he said, Mike, have you ever heard of this little community, Santa Maria de Jesus? I just feel God calling me to start a children's program up there. Really? Well, we got to talk to Pastor Gabriel. Who's he? Well, he's the new intern. Oh. Of course, in the middle of that conversation, Pastor Gabriel calls my cell phone. I'm like, oh, you got to talk to Mario. Here you go. And so the two of them just got connected at the hip, and they haven't separated in the last
Wow.
3 years as a result. We have seen, I think last number, 120 professions of faith in children in the
Wow.
community of Santa Maria de Jesus that have come out of that ministry. We've started this feeding center that it's a nominally $200,000 building that went up in 20 months from start to finish, from the time we knew the property was available to the time we dedicated the building to God.
Wow.
I'm going, oh my goodness, look at that. Why, of course, why are you ever surprised? God, show us what you want us to do, and we do it, and we act surprised. Oh, wow. That actually happened.
Yeah, and we ask him when he answers, we're surprised.
Absolutely. Yeah, and, with Celebrate Recovery, I was exposed to Celebrate Recovery through another ministry in Guatemala City, about 20 miles away from us. And I'm like, we need to do this. I didn't have resource, didn't speak any Spanish. I'm the good kid that never suffered through the traditional, obvious addictions. I have my own issues that I've since been dealing with. And, but it was going, God, how do I do this? Well, let's start with understanding the program. I understood the program. Okay. And that's when I met Giovanni. And I invited Giovanni. I need you to consider being the leader of this ministry. Mike, man, I'm separated. My life's confusing. No, well, you're clean, right? Oh, yeah. Okay, let's help guys get cleaned up. And what God brought is restoration after he said, I'm in. I'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with the National Police, Pastor Antonio. He was, when I first met him, the sales manager for a local jade store. Doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you'll make a great pastor. You've got the pieces. I can see it in your heart. Okay, well, what do I need to do? Well, why don't you come work for the church? You go to school, and we'll figure out the job later. Okay, I'm in. And out of these pieces, we've seen the National Police, the Children's Ministry, the Children's Feeding Center, the Celebrate Recovery grow. And I've got other staff members who've come in and are doing the very same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We have a dynamic youth ministry that have their own night of the week that they meet. And we have men and women's Bible studies, and all these pieces are all coming together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's out of those things, seeing the evidence of what God has done. June of 2012, I'm standing in a cornfield going, hey, if anyone has an extra $150,000 to help me build this building, that would be great. And 16 months later, I'm standing and going, look what God has done. 16 months. Look what God has done. So it's easy for me to approach with the Mil Casas project and go, listen, world, we need to know this. You guys need to understand that God is doing amazing things in Guatemala, and I believe that he's going to do this again.
How would you like to see people in the United States get involved in what you're doing?
Oh, on several levels. The most banal level, send money. Fundamentally, building 1,000 homes over 5 years is a very ambitious project. In actuality, you could place 10,000 homes, but 10,000 sounds really ambitious. So I just started with 1,000. Keep it simple. And the plan is we're going to take 6 months to get our final hiring, get our final pieces together, ramp up, and then start building homes. We're going to build homes for 4 years, 250 houses a year, and then have another 6 months for the project to trail off. Or if we have more resource, we'll continue to build homes, obviously. And I can tell you, you know, this is one of the most dynamic pieces to take. It culminates everything we've been doing over the last 8 years and puts it into a more focused channel, a more focused purpose. And, you know, it's going to be exciting to see where he takes this. But we need people to say, you know, I don't think I could go there, but I think I could help that. And, you know, they have $20 to help buy part of a wall. Or if I have 1,000 of my best friends that each can offer up $4,800, that would be marvelous. You know, well, Mike, how much does it cost per house? $3,000 per house.
Wow.
And that's the total kit with all the amenities and all the great things. The house assembles in 5 hours.
Wow.
It's a prefab metal home design. And now to help train the pastors, well, it averages out to about $1,800 a house to train the staff over those 5 years. 60 pastors being trained to go out into their own communities, and they're now ready to do ministry. That's a pretty exciting combination.
That is very exciting.
So you hear the number, oh, $4,800. Oh my goodness, that's expensive. Really? All we need are 1,000 of our best friends to offer up $4,800 each for the house. Now, how do I know this is possible? God has taken a little tiny ministry of 35, 50 people in average attendance 8 years ago and put my wife in Guatemala, who did not speak any Spanish of consequence. Look what God has done in Guatemala. And so that's on the giving side. And on the action side, where people say, well, we not only want to give to this, but we want to come down and get our hands dirty. Come on down. One of the other ministries the church does, we host, this year we're going to finish hosting about 600 volunteers from the United States.
Wow.
They come down and help in the various benevolence programs that the church has operating, ranging from our house building ministry to our helping other children's programs throughout the area. And then we also have our own feeding center that services nearly 1,000 children a month. And there's plenty to do. And most exciting is to come down and see firsthand what God is doing in Guatemala, which is some pretty amazing things.
Yeah. Well, when God's in it, it is amazing if we just, you know, have the faith to believe. I
often am sharing with my congregation. Okay, we got a prayer request to make God sweat. You know, I believe it was Pastor Andy Stanley that says, you know, how you pray shows how you have strayed. And if your prayers can't make God sweat, you're probably not building your faith enough. So we got a God-sized sweat problem, but the impact and even a $20 gift could make to train a pastor to provide safe living conditions for a family that is stuck in life. And when I say stuck in life, it's something as simple as you have people that just aren't going to get past where they are for a multitude of reasons. One of the simplest being, it's a mom with 4 children. She's breastfeeding one of them. She has no formal education because she did what she understood she was supposed to do. Marry this loving man and make babies. She married this loving man, and after 5-6 years of marriage, he looks at 4 kids and a wife and realizes he can't do it, and he crawls inside of a bottle and succumbs to the pressure. And now they don't know where he is.
Wow.
And now she's stuck. Well, is it her fault? Is it the kid's fault? And if we don't make a change, then you got a generational situation that hopefully the houses can make a change. And that's why we're headed where we're headed.
Well, that's great. It really sounds like a wonderful ministry, and it's exciting to see all that God's doing. Where can people find all this online to get more information? Come to our website. And that's a long name, but it's the name of the church, Iglesia del Camino, gt.com. Okay. Can you spell that? IGLESIADELCAMINOGT.com. And the project is Mil Casas, the project. Okay. Thank you so much, Mike, for being our guest. Jeanne, thank you very much for the privilege to be here.